Video games have evolved a lot over the couple decades they've been around. We went from two rectangles hitting a small square to games like Red Dead Redemption where you can see bodies decompose. And throughout those years, there have been many different evolutions that has spread into different genres and gimmicks that have not survived. And those genres died whether it's due to technology, a lack of interest in the genre, or just because the games just started sucking more. Today I'm going to go over these dead genres and gimmicks in gaming. The first one I'm going to talk about is FMV games. FMV stands for full motion video, and it was a genre where they would use films and cartoons instead of the 3D models or 2D models that other games had to program in. Of course, with this at the time was very limited gameplay, but the graphics that came from having film and cartoon instead of the limited models was very impressive for the time. A good example that you're probably familiar with is the game Dragon's Lair from the old arcades. The first wave of FMV games started in 1983 with the Laserdisc games. These games included Astron's Bell and Dragon's Lair, like I just mentioned. The Laserdisc helped store the video that was used in the games, which helped make the graphics look as good as they did. For perspective, imagine going into arcade as a kid being used to games looking like this, and then going to an arcade called Dragon's Lair, and then you see this. It was because that they could get away with the very simplistic gameplay, which usually was like quick time events, but it didn't matter because the advancement of technology at the time where they could do this was impressive enough that it was a good selling point. Now, why did this genre die? And I think the answer is pretty obvious, but it is because of graphics just advancing more and keeping up with FMV games to where the graphics couldn't be a selling point, especially when new games still looked good and played more fun. There are some more niche games that still exist in the FMV style, but the genre is not mainstream at all. It's pretty much dead at this point. It's also worth mentioning that CDs were a big reason why FMV games blew up in the 90s. They allowed for good video quality to be stored very cheaply, which was a very big advantage for these game companies. The next genre I want to talk about is rail shooters. In the mid-90s, rail shooters had their peak. They had games like Time Crisis, House of the Dead, and Star Fox 64 come out in that genre. And just like FMV games, the gameplay was very simplistic, but the style allowed for much better graphics and environments. The core idea of a rail shooter is that the game moves around for you, and you just have to focus on shooting whatever's in front of you. And just like with FMV games, technology eventually advanced to the point where you don't need to lock the player in a spot to make these kinds of graphics. You can just have them move freely and experience the same kind of graphics in great environments. So, of course, the genre is going to die out eventually. And despite the genre being dead on consoles, there are still plenty of arcade games that still have the style, and a lot of them are actually the old ones, just with better graphics. The next genre I want to talk about are the motion-controlled games from the 7th generation of consoles. Motion-control games are games that track your movement and translate it into the game. A great early example of this was the video game Hang On. It worked by using an arcade cabinet shaped like a motorbike so you could control your character without needing a controller. The most popular example that everyone knows of is the Wii. The Wii was very unique for its time and was very quickly copied by the Xbox and PlayStation with their crappy variants like the Kinect and the PS Move. The Kinect was a little different because you didn't need any control at all because it just tracked your entire body instead of the remote. This genre peaked around the mid-2000s, late 2000s. By the time the next generation of consoles came out, people were pretty done with the gimmick because the games weren't that good. If we're just being honest, it's a very limiting way to play a game, and the quality was not good on those games. So people were just like, okay, we're done with this, let's move on to the next thing. This genre ended up turning into VR gaming. With the Wii, PS Move, and Xbox Kinect, the controls were very clunky and sometimes just didn't even work properly, but VR has much better technology and it's way superior. The next genre I want to talk about is vehicle combat games, like Twisted Metal, Battle Tanks, Demolition Derby. There's a million others you can name. These games were pretty popular in like the late 90s, 2000s, about that time. These games were very popular because of their intense gameplay, the chaotic combat, and just the crazy vehicle designs you'd be able to use. This genre's death really came down to like just the quality of the games going down. Like as more sequels were made for like Twisted Metal, they just started getting worse. As more of them came out because of the popularity, they just started getting worse. And very sadly, the death of couch co-op gaming just killed the genre because that is the main like game mode you would play in the Twisted Metal is playing with each other. And as we know now, like couch co-op is pretty much dead except for a few games that still know that people play together. Now the next genre I want to talk about was extremely big in the like PS2 days, and that's the movie tie-in games. Like movie tie-in games, like every single movie that came out, I swear every single movie had a video game for it. How many of y'all were out here playing the B-movie game? Besides a few exceptions, these games usually were just mediocre or just straight up bad. And after a while, people kind of realize, oh, these games actually aren't going to get good the 50th time I buy them. Who knows what game caused this straw to break in the camel's back? I mean, it could have been anything. It could have been Alvin the Chipmunks. Could have been that Battleship game that was a Call of Duty knockoff. Could have been that Smurfs Dancing game on the Wii, even though we all love that one. And I mean, while movie tie-in games still exist, they're not like so prominent that it's like covering store shelves, Like you don't really see a lot of them. They're usually based on a property in movies, but they're not like based on movies, except for like the Lego movie games. I think by like the time the PS4 and Xbox One came out, people were kind of like, okay, we're done with these. There's better games to play now. But I would be lying if I said some of these games weren't actually like really fun and actually really good. It just every once in a while they would just make some masterpiece and it'd be based off like the most random movie, like King Kong. Can you believe it? We're already at the last game genre now. I've cut a couple genres I was going to talk about out because they're not really that interesting. But I think the final one is one that we're all very familiar with, and that's the instrument-based rhythm games. Like Guitar Hero and Rock Band were the biggest things in the world for a while. I mean, these games are still pretty fun to play now. Like, they really are. But the issue arises when you drop like 50 Guitar Hero games in a year, and people are like, okay, I get the idea. I don't want to buy another game that's just a different like song list, And also like buying like a whole like bunch of different controls, which cost like a ton of money, especially when they came out. I don't know how much they cost now. I'll put it up on the screen if I find it. But buying those controls is expensive and not everyone can do it, especially when you're jumping console generation to console generation. You have to actually like update them. So I think oversaturation of the games helped kill it, but also the high costs of entry to actually play them. I'm pretty sure you could play Guitar Hero on a normal control, but like, why would you even play it at that point, It's kind of pointless. But with the death of these game genres, they still are close to our hearts. We still have good memories associated with them, even if they aren't as prevalent or are completely dead now. Now, I'm sure some of these will have a return at some point. I think they will, just with the evolution of like the ideas we have. I think they will come back. But I think it's safe to say that they're gone now and we just have the memories of playing them, or we still have the old games now, just the relics of the past when they were at their peak. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching. Bye.